Welcome everyone to today's Girl Day at UT Austin High School session and college session. I know we have some college students joining in as well for this fabulous Women in Manufacturing panel. We're excited this year to be able to do some high school programming as part of Virtual Girl Day. I'm Trisha Berry. I am a chemical engineer. I love all of the things that we're going to hear today. I'm super excited to hear from all of these fabulous panelists, and I know you're going to learn a lot. You'll be able to use the Q&A pod to throw some questions out at our panelists, as well as the chat. We'll watch that for any questions that you might have. So please throw your questions in there for them. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to turn it over to our fabulous panelists to take it from here. Thanks, y'all.
Awesome. Thanks, Trisha. Hi, everyone. I'm Kristen Henninger. I am the membership lead for the Women in Manufacturing Texas chapter. I work as a chemical engineer for BASF with their technology for superabsorbent polymers in Freeport, Texas. So we'll go into a little bit about what Women in Manufacturing is as an organization, and then I'll turn it over to our panelists to talk about their careers in manufacturing, and then we'll end with some questions. Okay. Gonna hide that from you for a second. All right, so what is WiM? Women in Manufacturing is the only national trade association dedicated for women who have chosen a career in manufacturing. It's a relatively new organization. It was founded in 2011, and there's about 5,200 individual members, and it's in almost every state now. The Women in Texas was a newer chapter that we were just founded last year. And so this really represents people from all levels and aspects of manufacturing. So it's not just engineers, and it's not just your shop folks, but it's everyone from people on the shop floor to the executive board, and then including even business functions and commercial functions as well. So if you touch manufacturing at all, or you're interested in providing support, then WiM is the organization for you. So why is there a need for WiM? Women comprise 50% of the labor force, but only about 29% of the manufacturing workforce. And that can vary company per company. And so there's strong correlation between what women want in their careers and what manufacturing offers. And then it also provides a national network, and so you can really meet people outside just of the company that you work with. There's also opportunities for students to join Women in Manufacturing as well, and then you get access to a whole lot of programs like their virtual learning series and newsletters, and the Hear Her Story, so you can see different women in manufacturing and what their careers have been. So this is just an example of some of the companies that are associated with WiM. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but you might see a couple names that you recognize. So Women in Manufacturing Texas chapter, we are a relatively new chapter. We were founded last year, and we've been kind of getting the ball rolling, especially with our membership and initiatives. And so we're really interested in finding how we fit in the Texas community, because there is a large manufacturing presence in Texas, and we're working on sort of empowering the women that work in the manufacturing sector here in Texas. And so, all right, so this is just kind of a rundown of sort of what we've done now. Again, we launched in April of 2020. We've had a couple different events that have been really fun, like a self-care webinar, an Allies of Women in Manufacturing event that was last year. And then we have some events coming up this year as well. You can always connect with us through our social media pages and keep an eye out for some cool future events coming up. So, and then we have everything linked here. And I believe this will be shared with the group after the fact. So, all right. Are there any questions now I think wasn't sure if there was something in the chat. I might be missing it. But if there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and turn it back over to the panelists. So for those panelists who are on, Brandy, Jacqueline, and Laura, we can just go alphabetically if you would like.
Sure.
Brandy, if you're comfortable going first.
Yes, for
So
sure.
just go
Happy
ahead.
to kick things off. So hello, everyone. I am Brandy Macbeth. I work for BASF. I am a commercial account manager in our chemical catalyst division. So a little bit about how I got into manufacturing. I actually came into manufacturing as a career change. I worked in the industry 10 years in another industry. Actually, it was corrections. I'm actually from the area of Port Arthur. I'm not sure if you know about the Port Arthur area, but we had plenty of plants and we had plenty of prison systems. So, so I wanted to try to be a helper and help the community. I went the correction route. When you start talking about a financial standpoint, it didn't make sense for me. I quickly learned that there were opportunities in the area at the area plants where they were needing women for manufacturing jobs. So I got lucky. I would say I got into the right networking circles, ended up getting an opportunity to go back to school. I completed a process technology degree, which led me to an opportunity within the manufacturing. I got a job. Actually, I had like 5 job offers at the end of my term in school. But that tells you how big of a need females are needed in industry. So I was hired on with BASF as a process technology operator. I worked there 6 years running our C4 complex. These are products that go into propylene products that go into plastics, butadiene that goes into the rubber industry, automobile industry, alkylation that goes into octane boosting. So got my feet wet in operations. 6 years later, I kind of wanted to venture off into just kind of learn more about the company in itself, right? And I knew there were a lot of opportunities that would lead on to other roles within the company. So I decided to move into the commercial side of BASF, where I took a role in indirect procurement. So you're talking about 12 sites across North America, all those services that's needed to run those plants, I procured those services. Career progression then led to supply chain. So I was a senior supply chain planner for one of our businesses. And in that role, you're pretty much operating the logistics. So you're telling sales and marketing, you know, how much product we need to produce according to our demand. And so I kind of ran that for one of our businesses in Freeport. Did that a couple of years, and then I said, okay, what really makes Brandy happy, right? And so again, when you get into manufacturing, you have so many routes you can go. You know, it just kind of depends on what you end up liking and what your interests are. So I'm naturally a people's person. I love developing relationships. I love people. I like one-on-one trying to help people solve issues. I immediately got an opportunity to go into our sales division. So that's the role I'm currently in now as a commercial account manager. The business I support is chemical catalysts. So I work with a lot of petrochemical plants. I work with a lot of refineries, oil refineries, and special niche businesses, if you will. Yeah, I mean, I love what I do. Again, sales, I think, is not my ending point. I'm 14 years in within BASF, and I feel like I had another 14 to go. But the ride has been great. Again, if you like science, if you like technology, if you want to, depending on your learning style, if you want to be a specialist in something, you can specialize in technology. If you're like me, more of a breadth learner and learn a little bit about a lot, you have that option as well. So yes, we definitely, I'm a big promoter of helping women get into the industry. So yeah, we need women. Girl power for sure is needed in these roles. So yeah, that's me. And good luck. I hope we can get more women on board in the industry.
Thanks, Brandy. We'll go ahead and have Jacqueline introduce herself, and then we'll have some questions at the end too for you guys to share.
Yeah, I was looking at the list and I'm like, all right, I'm a J. And I'm like, oh no, I'm next because all these other ladies are K's and L's. Hi there. My name is Jacqueline Evans, and I'm a chemical engineer. I graduated from UT Austin in 2015, and I work for Chevron in Midland, Texas, which is West Texas. I grew up in Katy, Texas, which is a suburb of Houston, and I thought I wanted to be a teacher or a doctor or something that really helped me or helped other people. And then I realized that I didn't think I had the communication skills to be a teacher, and blood and needles really scared me. So the doctor route or the nursing route probably wasn't for me. So I settled on chemical engineering because it was a way that I could help other people design solutions to problems, and really kind of flex that creative muscle that really wasn't demonstrated in art, but was demonstrated more in academics. It was kind of a shot in the dark of deciding to do chemical engineering, and I loved how it taught me how to think. I think I struggled in math and science as a child and as a teenager, but I worked really hard, and I love the satisfaction of finally growing and understanding the patterns or how to solve problems. I had a few internships in college, one at a chemical plant, one as a consultant for tech or software. And then after college, signed on with Chevron. And at Chevron, I've had a few roles, but my favorite roles have been when I got to work with operations or with equipment. So understanding how to make things better, how to work with what you have. I never thought I would have a job where I'm in a warehouse, just kind of climbing up, trying to find equipment or parts to salvage to make something. And I'm covered with grease and spider webs. And I'm like, I didn't think I would be doing this, but this is a ton of fun that I'm paid to come up with a solution and be creative and find what I can salvage and make, and then have it work and have it be safe. It is a really satisfying experience. So I'm only 5-6 years out of college, but the responsibility I have and the impact that I can make is astounding to me. And with a degree in chemical engineering or engineering in general or science in general, you have the option to touch so many industries or choose your path of where you want to go, and maybe even change that path. Right now, I'm taking a class to expand my skill set in data science and statistics, so that I just am constantly learning and know how to be an engineer for the future, because I really love my job, and I really love applying my job to things around the house, even like plumbing issues, or I'm like, ooh, let me see how I can fix my toilets. Like, how can I make my toilet better? And it's just so empowering that I have the knowledge to be able to take care of my home and my family. So that's my story. I'll kick it off to one of the Ks, which might be Kristen.
Thanks, Jacqueline. I think Lisa and I are here more for moral support. We can certainly share stories if you want, but we'll go ahead and move on to Laura to go ahead and share.
Okay. Hold on 1 second here. All right, I had written something up, so I wanted to make sure that I covered everything. So good morning, my name is Laura Pullins, and I am the Director of Digital Supply Chain for Helft. Helft is a 50-year-old technology company, and we make systems talk to each other, and we work with super cool ideas like bringing information from the internet, teaching a computer how to predict the future, and using numbers and past events to do analytics and tell you kind of where your business is sitting. So that's a really cool industry to be in. But I want to start back when I was a sophomore in high school. And if you would have asked me what I wanted to become, my answer would have been a florist. I love flowers. I have cut flowers in my house all the time, but I'm not a florist. It's still my passion. And when I walk into a room and I see flowers, I'm just drawn to them. But so how did I go from wanting to be a florist in high school to where I'm at right now? So I sit back and I think, if someone had came to me in high school and said, this is what your future is going to look like, I would not have believed them. And this is what they would have said. They would have said to me, at 25, you're going to be living in Mexico on a work assignment for an appliance manufacturer. You'll be working in production planning, warehousing, and transportation. And your boss is going to be a female engineer. So a project engineer. So that would have been what they told me when I was 25. 5 years later, they would say, you're going to be working for Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines, and you're going to be the manager of supply chain. And you'll be involved in warehouse design and deciding on the technology needed to run the warehouse. And as you can guess, who am I working with? I'm working with engineers. They would tell me, by 40, you'll be the director and you will have been the expert in the design of the storage areas on board the biggest cruise ships in the world. Again, who am I working with? I'm working with engineers. And in the cruise industry, the most valuable engineers are really the environmental engineers, because we're keeping the ocean safe, and you have to have an environmental team on every cruise ship. By this time, they will have told me that I've traveled to over 30 countries and countless cities. And then from that point, my career just continued, and I moved into the technology side of business. So really, of course, I'm telling this story because I didn't become a florist when I was in high school. I did get my associate's degree in business, and I started to work at Whirlpool Corporation. That was the appliance manufacturer that I was working with. And what happened was, when I started at Whirlpool, I looked around and I thought, these people are not smarter than me. What do they have that I don't have to help me to get promoted? And what it was basically a bachelor's degree. So I went back and I got my bachelor's degree. And I realized that the only limiter at Whirlpool was myself. It wasn't other people looking at me saying, oh, she doesn't know this information. It was me looking internally and saying, I'm limiting myself. And so when I realized that, then everything kind of opened up, and I wanted to look at, what is my specialty? What can I be the specialist at? And I was very fortunate at Whirlpool to start to learn about process management and process design. And so we were, of course, when you build a washer, there's a lot of engineering that goes into it. But Whirlpool had looked not only at what is the process of building or what goes into the process of the actual mechanics of a washer, but they were looking at what is the business process that's associated with the design, starting from accounting, marketing, procurement, and how do you become more efficient at the entire design. So that is where my specialty is. I am on the business side of process design. I love working with the engineers because we make a great pair. I define what I'm looking to do, and they define the boundaries and the opportunities associated with how we're going to achieve our overall goal and our overall process. So what I will leave you with is just 2 homework assignments. One is really to think about the steps that you take when you're doing something. So engineering is very basic. It's like, I'm brushing my teeth. What steps do I follow? What do I use to brush my teeth? When you're doing your hair, what are the steps that you follow when you're doing your hair? It's identifying something that you can make repeatable. How do I make this process repeatable so it's efficient and effective? Hula hooping. catching a baseball, whatever you're doing, there's a process behind it that makes it more efficient and more effective every time. And I think the second thing I'm going to leave with you, which is my own personal experience, is always know that every time you're in a room with other people, you are the expert in something. You know more than someone else in that room. So those are my contributions.
Thank you. I think we had some questions come in the Q&A. So I think I can just click to answer them all live. So the first one, just to whoever wants to take this, you can go for it. But it's asking, have you dealt with sexism in the workplace and how did you deal with it? Go for it.
I'll take that one. So yeah, so funny story. When I started in operations, out of 100 operators, it was only 4 females. And it was 1 female on each shift. So I never was in an environment where I actually worked with another female colleague. We always saw each other like on the pass though, right? So just kind of keep that in mind. So then if you're working with a bunch of guys, you know, the mentality is, this is something new for them. The industry's been around forever. It's always been a male-dominant field. But the role is changing and females are getting in these roles now. But I can recall when I first started, yeah, you would have that, some guys just had that old school mentality where females just didn't belong. It wasn't safe for females to be there. You know, the females' position is at home. So you had a lot of old school mentality and actually in my environment. But one thing I can say is going in that type of environment, you really had to really know and take an interest in what you were doing and just pretty much show that you do belong. So, you know, I had to do probably a little extra than my colleagues just to kind of prove that point. But again, you're dealing with a mindset. I think we've come a long way from that. That was back in the early 2000s. So today in 2021, I would say the landscape looks a whole lot different from when I started. I think my last plant visit, actually at the old plant that I worked at, I was so proud to see that when I walked in the control room, there was a control room full of women. So I just wanted to jump for joy seeing that. But yeah, again, at the beginning, I would say you did have to work with colleagues that felt like a woman's place was not in the plant. But again, you have a responsibility too to show that you do belong. And I think if you do a really good job with that, you know, heads up, you'll be fine. You will be absolutely fine, and you'll be open to opportunities like that you wouldn't even imagine.
I would agree with that. And I would just add a point to that is there are a lot of things that women do a little bit better than men. So one of the things is really details and being detail oriented. And in process and in engineering and in production, knowing the details and following the details is so important. And again, never underestimating what the knowledge that you have or that you're bringing to the table as well. There are studies that show that when men are interviewing, they will always identify as being able to do something that they haven't done before. And when women interview, women look at, well, I might not have done that before, so I can't really do that. And I think that's something to take away from this too, is don't ever underestimate the ability for your future and what you can do. Yes, you've seen this process. How can you apply something that you've done to something that you can do in the future? So that's another point.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, and I think just to add a little bit for those wondering, a lot of the manufacturing industry, most of the companies I'm aware of have metrics around diversity and inclusion, and it is a very large focus for us. And so I think like as a whole, the organization is working towards a more inclusive environment, and there's a lot of support now that there may not have been at the at the time that Brandy's talking about in the early 2000s. So we can move on to the next question. So I think someone asked, what is the most challenging thing about a career in manufacturing?
I think I'll jump into this. One of the things is when you start to talk to your family about what you're doing and your close friends, they really have no idea what you do. So, you know, you kind of, you have your that's why we have women in manufacturing, because we have a group of people that do the same thing that we do. So sometimes it's challenging when you talk about this is what I do and people look at you like you're in production planning. What is production planning? You're in transportation and logistics. What is that? They don't really understand what your concept is. If you say I'm in marketing, it's like kind of glamorous. If you're doing, you know, something else, it seems accounting, it's kind of defined. But when you say I'm in production planning or I'm in engineering, they kind of go, huh, what is that? So
I would say for me, manufacturing, there's so many applications and so many, you know, ways we produce products, right? Whether you're in petrochemical, whether you're in refining, and just keeping up with what that is and keeping up with how economics affect the way a plant runs. So I would say the most challenging part is not a one fit all in manufacturing. It's like you really need to, if you're in a particular role, learning about that process. It's funny, I'm in chemical catalyst sales. So I have one catalyst that I sell to 3 different industries. They work 3 totally different ways. I can place them 3 totally different ways. I mean, there's so many, you know, aspects of that one product. So that's the pretty cool thing about manufacturers, that we have so many processes, we have so many technologies, and it's just keeping up with that. You just gotta, it takes some extra push to do that. But I say it's a challenge, but it's also a unique opportunity, right? So a never ending learning journey within manufacturing. But it's not a one fit for all. There's so many things that happens within manufacturing industry. So I would say from a challenger standpoint, yeah, it's just so much you can learn. It's not, you know, this and then that's it, right? So that would be my feedback to that question.
For me, it was a confidence challenge of learning how to be confident in my work and really advocate for my work and my designs. You know, I think someone earlier talked about really gaining credibility with your male coworkers. And so I am, you know, a shy person in general, and then as a building credibility or having that lack of confidence. And it took me a few years to stand up for my work and say why I think something would work or wouldn't work, and just continuing that practice has really helped my relationships with my coworkers, and have people, the operation staff, trust me and trust my ideas.
Okay, thank you. All right, and then this is the last question that came in through the Q&A. I think the attendees can still submit if they had any other questions pop up. But what are your best tips for future and current college students? And what did you do in college that benefited you in your career?
I'll take this one first, if that's all right. Something that really benefited me is to start interviewing companies yourself, you know, maybe not directly or explicitly, but get to know the company's culture. So attending events or meetings sponsored by companies, talking to those representatives. You know, I thought of those kind of recruiters as scary, and they're just people, right? They have dogs and, you know, hobbies and bake pizza on the weekend, right? Like, they're not scary. And it's getting to know if you fit with that culture. You know, if you think you thrive on a really collaborative kind of place or a more competitive place. You know, everyone's different and have different motivations. So that is my tip. You know, ask kind of, you know, personal questions of the company employees, like, where do you live? Do you like it? What kind of personal life does working for that company afford you? And what I do in college that benefited me, I really took advantage of the Women in Engineering program that UT offers. Just lots of events for exposure with companies and building your personal and professional skills.
Yeah, I can echo that a little bit, Jacqueline, too. Since we were in college together, I would say also just having a good network of your fellow peers is also really helpful. You have people to kind of bounce ideas off of, and then you get a sense, like, people intern in a lot of different locations with a lot of different companies. So you might not have a chance to do 50 internships, but you might have 5 or 10 friends that all did something different. So you'll get a good understanding of what that is just by talking to even those people too. So I think, Brandy, you started to unmute. Did you want to tackle that?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, you know, you guys, Jacqueline, Christian, you hit it on the head. Network. I mean, you know, I know a lot of the colleges, and actually when I was in school, a lot of the companies like your Exxons, your Dows, you know, they would come to the school. They would have sessions where they would do mock interviews, so you can start practicing your interview skills if you did get that call. Some of your staff and admissions, your advisors, I mean, you have resources at the school. I would definitely tap into those. One other thing is organizations like WiM. I mean, you know, these organizations tap into schools, they tap into the community. So anytime you know something about these events, I would say go network, build your network up. So when opportunities come, at least you have someone that you can rely on for resources and information. One other thing is personal contacts. If you know, if your aunt or uncle or, you know, brother works at the plant, you know, ask questions about what they do and get feedback from them on what industry means to them as an employer. And that'll help you kind of gauge what direction you should probably go. Because again, manufacturing is a huge organization, industry. I mean, there's so many paths you can go, but I think tapping into all those resources will help you kind of gauge your way through it.
Yeah, I would totally agree with everything. I think one other point to add is just if you're someone that likes to travel globally, like for me, I was very passionate about going to other places outside of the United States. So when you start looking at those companies, look to see if they have a global presence, because if they have a global presence, it may give you the opportunity to see different places that you wouldn't normally be able to see. And of course, there's an expensive budget and that company pays for you to go to those places. And then you can be a little picky sometimes too. You don't necessarily go for the first job that comes to you, or, you know, make sure you think about the value that you're going to bring to the organization. They have something to offer you, but you also have a lot to offer them with your education and your background and your enthusiasm. So don't underestimate the fact that you can choose between different companies that may suit you better for your total life plan. I grew up in Michigan. My first job was at Whirlpool, which was near me in Michigan, but I do not like the cold weather. And so when I had the opportunity to work for the cruise line, part of the reason I moved to work for the cruise line was because it was in Miami and I wanted to get away from winter. And so I've stayed, you know, in the South. I work in Miami. I've worked in Houston. I mean, great places, great cities, and I like big cities. And so those are other things to think about too. If you love big cities and the plant is in a small town and it's going to take you 4 hours to get to the big city, maybe it's not some place that you want to move forward to, or where you want to work. And just on the college things, I think anytime you have an opportunity to do a project and you can contact a local company and say, hey, I'm doing this project. Is there something I can do for you? Is there a project that I can apply to your actual business process or something like that? Do that and think about those as always being a resume builder. You're always building your resume on everything you do. So just a couple things to think about.
Awesome, thank you. We have one more question and then I think we'll probably wrap it up. But Chelsea is asking, what is your favorite and least favorite thing about your role in manufacturing?
My favorite part about my role is getting to work with other people and to collaborate. A lot of my engineering work is kind of done by committee. So it's, I might come up with a design by myself, but then I always talk with other engineers and make it better and better. And then I talk with the people who are upfront with the operations and get their input. And so it's just growing and getting more robust. My least favorite part about my role is some of the sites I support are hours and hours away. So it's a lot of driving sometimes. I don't go out there every day, but that can be a little tiring, but it's not permanent.
Yeah, so I'll go in and say that my favorite, I would say, I've had numerous roles, so I would just kind of maybe think about all the roles I've had. And I would say my favorite role in manufacturing was probably the one I'm in now as a commercial account manager. BASF has awarded me an opportunity to do business all over the world. I have a focus in Americas, but I travel 60-70% in my role. So I have what you call a remote role, where if I'm not traveling, I'm at home working from home. So from a flexibility standpoint, I love that. I'm a traveler, I like to go. So it's cool that I get to travel all over for work. And then, when I have downtime, I just can get to explore the area that I'm in from a personal standpoint. So that's pretty awesome. And again, I think somebody mentioned it, and I mean, the company's paying for it, you're working, so you get to do a job that allows you to go all over and explore all these different areas. And other thing is, I have colleagues and relationships that I've built all over the world now. So, my colleagues in Europe, my colleagues in Asia, my colleagues in Brazil, South America. I mean, I have colleagues all over the world. So I think that's pretty cool. And my role in manufacturing allowed for that to happen. I would say my least favorite, if I can think back when I had a role within the production manufacturing community, there's this thing called troubleshooting when things don't work out like you plan it to do. Yeah, there are times you got to climb up 100+ foot towers and whatnot and go troubleshoot what the issue is. And given on let's think about last week when it was 8 degrees, not so much fun climbing up a tower and having to troubleshoot. But again, that's not a norm thing, but it does happen. And then you got to be able to get into the trenches when those kind of things happen. So I would say I'm not a fan of cold weather. So there has been some times when I had to do some troubleshooting in that type of weather, and the tower was swaying from side to side. It just was not a fun position to be in. But again, that's all part of the journey. I appreciate that part of the journey. But again, opportunity has awarded me a position that I don't do that anymore. So that's all part of the past. But again, appreciative for it. But yeah, it probably would be my least favorite.
And I would say that some of the things that I like the best about being in production planning and being in supply chain and manufacturing was just the team that I worked with. I love people, and it was great to be able to teach people about process management and how to look at the process, the total process, from the person that was in purchasing right down to the warehouse worker that was receiving the goods, to say, okay, you may think this is a great idea, but when the guy actually has to receive it, it's not a great idea. So it's really looking at the whole picture. And I had the opportunity to promote people within my organization and just highlight what their skills were so that they can move forward in their career. So it's just not so much about my career, but it was also about promoting other people. And again, it was at all levels, from the warehouse people right up to managers that were reporting to me, and moving them forward in their jobs and in their career. And I think my least favorite is that when you do move into operations, it becomes, at least in my industry, was a 24/7 job. So that can be challenging. I mean, when you're at your son's soccer game or your son's lacrosse game, or you're at a play or something, the phone rings and you can't say, oh, let me call you in 2 hours. You got to go then because there is an emergency and somebody needs something right then. So I think that was really the trade-off. There's a lot of really great things that I loved, and that was the trade-off. But in the overall picture, I would continue to do it again. I really enjoy what I do, and you can go. It's not the norm. It's not the norm, like Jacqueline and Brenda, you're saying. It's not the norm, but it is something you have to deal with.
I would like to
Awesome.
add
Yeah.
one quick cool thing. It's funny, in the role I'm in now, I get to work with a big company. I won't say the company's name, but they produce products that we all use as consumers. And so when these new products come out in Walmart, or your local store where you get all your hygiene supplies, I'll talk about the product Tide. So as you know, there's all these fancy beads, fragrance beads and fragrances and whatnot for your detergent. But it's funny that it was pretty cool, not funny, but the cool part of it is when you're on the front end of how that product came to market. That's typically the role that I'm in. I'm at the table with the scientists and the chemists and the engineers that put that formula together, right? And so to see it on the shelf as an end use, as a final product, and to know that you have something to do with that product on the shelf is pretty exciting. I can tell you, sometimes I go to the store and know about a product that I was involved in, and I get super excited, and my friends are like, why are you getting happy about some soap? And I'm like, you just don't know what happened to get this soap on the market. So I think that's pretty cool that, I get involved in some of those situations as well. So.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Brandy, I recently moved into a more like customer facing plant, and I'm also like in the diaper using stage of life now with a 1-year-old. And so it's pretty cool to see that type of product on the shelf, and to know like that is my product, I made that. And so all of that is pretty neat. So I think we'll go ahead and wrap up. There's no more questions that come in, and we're about at time. So thank you, everyone, to all the attendees who dialed in, and anyone who's listening to this after the fact. And then thanks for all the panelists for sharing your experiences. I think it was really valuable, and it was cool to learn just about all your different career paths. And it's clear everyone really has a passion for manufacturing and for their jobs. And so that clearly came out. It was awesome to hear. So I think just a housekeeping thing, there's some more Girl Day high school programming that's coming up next week. And so I think you can check the website for that as well. I think Trisha has some more information. So, but thank you, everyone.